Hello, everyone. Tonight, we delve into a different story. It is not about a brilliant legend, but about the raw, hard reality that hides behind armor. Here you will not find dragons or perfect heroes, only a life built on duty, fear, wounds, and the silent struggle to survive among steel, battlefields, sleepless nights, and the slow decline of glory. If these stories help you rest, do not hesitate to give the video a like and subscribe, but only if they truly bring you peace. And tell me in the comments where you listen from and what time it is. It is strangely comforting to know who else is carried away by the same slow advance through history. So dim the lights. Let the fire of your imagination warm the stone walls. Get comfortable, and let's start with the creation of a knight. You are 7 years old when the path to knighthood begins. Not with a sword, but with a farewell. Your parents, proud and perhaps relieved, send you to serve in the house of a noble lord. There are no farewells written in ink or preserved in memories. Only a pat on the shoulder, a package of clothes, and the weight of expectations that rests on your small, growing body. No one asks if you are prepared. Actually, preparation is irrelevant. Now you're a page. The castle rises above you. Stone towers that extend toward a gray sky. Its silhouette promises greatness and difficulty. The door opens. What lies beyond is not a world of honor and glory, but one of scrubbing, serving, and surviving. Knighthood will come later, after years of fetching, carrying, and cleaning horses and nobles with equally unpleasant temperaments. Your duties are endless. From dawn until late at night, you run errands, sweep halls, deliver messages, and help with meals. On especially lucky days, you are allowed to polish armor, which sounds glamorous until you realize it means scraping dried mud and manure off heavy iron boots. Your hands are full of blisters, your back hurts, and the knights barely notice you. You're not one of them yet. You are the helper. But even in these early days, training begins. Wooden swords are handed out as if they were brooms, and they fill your arms with bruises while you fight with other boys who, like you, are eager to prove something. They teach you how to fall off a horse without breaking your neck. You fall often. Some days it seems that falling is the main lesson. No one praises you for your bruises, but they scold you for your weakness. You learn fast. The pain must be swallowed, not shown. Discipline is everything. You only speak when spoken to. You have to bow more to those of higher rank. An order should never be questioned, however trivial or humiliating it may be. Your mistakes are corrected with a blow to the back or a weak scrubbing chamber pots. A child forgets to take off his hat in the presence of the lady of the house. He spends 2 days on his knees in the chapel, praying for humility. No one ever forgets it again. If your family is rich, you may be assigned a tutor to teach you to read, write, and perhaps some Latin. Although Latin seems useful mainly for understanding religious services and tomb inscriptions. If not, you learn by imitation. You listen. You memorize sentences. You copy letters with trembling hands when the butler is generous enough to share a piece of parchment. Literacy is a luxury. Physical strength and obedience are more important. Even so, you learn. You learn which fork to use, although most prefer fingers. You learn to remain still for hours at court banquets, balancing trays of steaming meat while the nobles talk politics and complain about wine. You learn to go unnoticed when tempers flare and disappear completely when drunken knights begin boasting about past battles. Every moment is a lesson in survival. The mornings begin with Mass. The castle chapel is cold all year round, and your breath condenses in the air as you kneel on the stone floor. Try not to fall asleep during the liturgy. Faith is not optional. It is as much a part of your training as swordsmanship. They teach you to fear hellfire, to respect the church, and to confess regularly. The priests speak of divine purpose, of sacred duty. You nod, trying to stay awake. Above all, you pray not to get sick. There are few remedies and even fewer recoveries. Meals are short and usually consist of bread, cheese, and meat if you're lucky. Vegetables are suspicious. Many believe raw vegetables cause disease. Therefore, you develop a constant diet of salted meat and dry crusts. You eat quickly, knowing that the next task awaits. On rare occasions, Holidays may bring roast pork or oatmeal cakes with honey. These days are remembered for years, like dreams glimpsed through smoke. At night, the hall comes alive. The minstrels sing ballads, relating stories of Arthur, Roland, and saints who killed dragons. You sit on the edges near the fire, trying to catch every word. The songs are meant to inspire, but you're too tired to be excited. You think more about your aching feet than chivalrous feats. However, something stirs inside you. Perhaps the hope that one day someone will sing about you. You sleep where you can, often in the servants' quarters, shoulder to shoulder with other boys on straw cots that smell of sweat and mold. Some nights you are awakened to help with newcomers or unexpected guests. You learn to get up without complaining, to work to exhaustion, and not to let your eyes betray tiredness. A knight must be ready at any moment. Training begins here. You are not alone. Other pages suffer with you. You form silent friendships based on shared glances and murmured complaints. Together, you learn the rhythms of life in the castle. You learn which knights are cruel and which will look away when you steal a second helping of stew. You learn who to trust, who to fear, and what corners of the castle offer a moment of peace. There are moments of levity, a joke from the cook, a clumsy knight tripping over a dog, a stolen apple. You cling to these moments. They remind you that life exists beyond duty. That laughter still has a place even here. From time to time, you glimpse the world beyond the walls. Merchants arriving with silks and spices, a troupe of artists, or a noble woman passing by on horseback with a retinue. Those images seem strange, like stories glimpsed through fog. You still do not form part of that world, but perhaps someday you will. Sometimes doubt takes hold of you. The stories of glory seem distant, reality much harder. You wonder if all this, the pain and the extremities, the scoldings, the hunger, is really the path toward honor. But from time to time you see a knight riding with shining armor and waving pennant, and your chest shrinks when thinking that someday it could be you. Your lessons in humility are not limited to bruises and hunger. There are also ceremonies to attend, although you are nothing more than background noise. You observe how the nobles gather, dressed in fine fabrics that you are not allowed to touch, let alone wear. Their looks and, sometimes, their words remind you that your position is between useful and invisible. When dignitaries visit, the castle becomes a theater. You help prepare the guest rooms, clean the silver, and sweep the same hallways 3 times. If something is out of place, the pages get blamed. And if something goes wrong, let's say a dog bites the leg of a visiting bishop, well, let's say that it helps to know how to avoid being seen. You quickly master the art of looking busy without being near the problem. On feast days, there is music, dancing, and too much wine. At least for the adults. You're allowed to look from the corners, soaking up the sounds and images while pretending not to look too closely. From time to time, someone passes you a candy or piece of cake, and for a moment, the burden of your position lightens. But these small gestures of kindness do not erase reality. Your place is to serve, observe, and remember. Some pages find escape in books if they know how to read. The old butler's room houses a handful of illuminated manuscripts, heavy, bound in leather, and guarded with the same zeal as the Lord's arsenal. On lucky nights, you are allowed to sit by the fire and listen to an older scribe read aloud stories of Roman generals or saints who endured indescribable trials. These stories feed the mind while your body recovers from the day's tasks. There are also warnings pronounced in a low voice or murmured by the older servants. They tell you about pages who failed to ascend, boys who collapsed under pressure or were sent home in disgrace. Sometimes they disappear without explanation. Sometimes you hear things you shouldn't have. You quickly learn when to speak, when to nod, and when to keep your head down. The castle is your crucible, and every hour you spend within its walls forges you into something harder, more agile, more capable. You're not a knight, not yet, but you are no longer a child. You are a creature in transition, mistreated, disciplined, and silently determined. So when you stay awake at night, looking at the wooden beams above your straw mattress, you think not only about what you have endured, but about what awaits you. The next phase, the next challenge, the next step on the path that one day, if the gods, your lord, and your body allow it, will turn you into a knight. But for now, you are a page, and that is enough. At 14 years old, your page apron is ceremoniously cut off, although not with any kindness or gentleness. You are no longer a page. Now you are a squire. And although this new title may seem like a promotion, it carries considerably fewer sweets and many more bruises. You have gone from polishing floors to polishing armor, from fetching cups to fetching the man who might be dying in one. Your new role is personal, even intimate. You are assigned a knight and are expected to serve him with the same fidelity as a shadow. Where he goes, you go. If he rides to battle, you follow him. If he falls, you run to the butchery to help him up, risking your own life in the process. You're no longer a child of the castle. You are a warrior squire, and your days are determined by his demands. Physical training is multiplied tenfold. Riding a war horse, for example, is not the elegant glide you once imagined. These beasts are enormous, raised for strength and war, and more temperamental than most nobles. Riding them is a small battle itself. Controlling them, a constant negotiation. Your thighs ache. Your spine shakes with each step. But has not felt normal since Mecklenburg. The sword training intensifies. Now you wield real swords, not to kill, but sharp enough to cause concern if your opponent is less rested or more distracted than you. You train daily, with your body covered in bruises that never quite disappear before new ones appear. Each session is an exercise in humility. For every blow you give, you receive 3. The knight you serve does not expect elegance. He expects determination. But perhaps the most exhausting part of your tasks is caring for the equipment. Armor, as you quickly learn, is not just metal. It is an ecosystem. Sweat, dirt, and, on occasion, a slug somehow sneak into the joints of the chainmail. You clean it, you polish it, you inspect every hinge and every strap. If the greaves squeeze you, or the helmet visor gets stuck in the middle of the battle, it is your fault. If your knight dies because you have not seen a broken buckle, you will probably wish you had died first. The weapons must be sharpened daily. The spears must be tested. The shields must be examined for cracks. Your knight's life and your reputation depend on the absolute precision of your work. No one thanks you when everything goes well, but everyone notices when something goes wrong. And then there are the tournaments. When you were a page, you idealized them. They were colorful events with trumpets and cheering maidens. Now you see how blunt swords break bones. You are the one who saddles the horse, carries the spears, and wipes the blood from your knight's cheek so he can smile at the crowd. If he wins, you collect the cash prize. If he loses, you pick up his broken ribs and what is left of his dignity. When the real war comes, and it comes, you march alongside your knight into the mud, the rain, and the uncertainty. The campaigns are long and uncomfortable. Food is scarce. Sleep is even scarcer. Your armor, if you have any, rubs you in places you did not know existed. You begin to understand the true meaning of exhaustion when your limbs only move because you know you must. The battle is not glorious. It is a cacophony of screams, metal, and orders that are lost in the wind. The clash of bodies, the stench of blood and sweat, the sudden silence of a dying man. All of this becomes your education. You learn to distinguish between the fear that sharpens you and the fear that paralyzes you. You pray that the former appears more often. You're not there to fight. Not yet. But that does not mean you are safe. When your knight falls, your job is to get to him, lift him up, and get him out of danger. Imagine dragging a man in all his armor, each piece heavier than a Christmas roast, through a muddy field while arrows fall like. Then, it is not heroic. It is exhausting, and the reward is usually just the opportunity to do it again the next day. When your knight is injured, you tend to his wounds. If he is captured, you are expected to negotiate or send messages to ensure his release. Sometimes this means dealing with men who would rather see him rot. You don't learn diplomacy from tutors, but from necessity. You must measure your words, maintain a humble posture, and a respectful tone. Even your silence becomes a tool. They're moments, rare but real, in which you feel proud. When you lead your knight's horse to camp and all heads turn to look, when he greets you with a nod after battle, bloody but alive. These moments are fleeting like sunlight through arrow slits. But they are important. They keep you going. Back in the castle, your duties continue. You train younger pages, passing on the same hard lessons that you learned in your day. You serve at banquets, help organize hunts, and stand by your lord throughout the night when important guests arrive. Your sword is worn, your boots are cracked, and you move like a man twice your age. But you are no longer just a servant. They watch you, evaluate you, measure you. The priests are still waiting for your prayers. Your lord is still waiting for your loyalty. Your body waits to rest, something it rarely gets. But there is no turning back. The only way is to keep going. You start thinking about your own coat of arms. What colors? What symbols? You dream of the moment of appointment, with the sword touching your shoulders as you rise, not as a squire, but as a knight. It seems something impossible to reach. It seems inevitable. It seems both things. Then there are the difficult days. The days when you bury a fellow squire trampled by a war horse or pierced by a spear that seemed not quite blunt enough. No one sings songs for squires. No one writes poems for the boys who almost made it. You learn to carry the pain without showing it. You learn to keep working even when the ground shifts under your feet. If you are lucky, your knight teaches you more than how to fight. He teaches you to think, to judge the character of a man, to read a battlefield, to lead. If he is wise, he teaches you when to speak and when to be silent, how to choose your battles, and how to lose with dignity. These are not things that armor protects you from, but they are just as important. Winter brings new challenges. Now you understand that a sword is only as effective as the hand that can still feel its hilt. Your fingers crack from the cold, and the metal of your knight's armor feels like ice when you fasten it each morning. The snow turns the training yard into an icy mire. The horses slip. You too. You don't complain. Time, like war, does not care how you feel. It is spoken among the most veteran squires. There is talk of glory, of rebellion in the east, of the king's call. You listen, absorb, and calculate. You have seen enough to know glory often seems like a tomb. Even so, you would go out tomorrow if they called. The waiting is usually worse than war. You write your first letter now. It is rigid, formal, and clumsy. Addressed to your parents, if they still live, and you tell them very little indeed. You don't even know where to send it now. But writing it seems important now. Like anchoring yourself to yourself. Like proving that you are still someone under the bruises, the sweat, and the steel. One night, after a banquet, your knight, drunk with mead and nostalgia, tells you about his first campaign. He describes the rain, hunger, and emotion of surviving the charge. Then he remains silent still. He stares at the fire and names 3 men who did not return home. You do not speak now. You must listen. And remember well. You practice daily, sometimes secretly. You imitate your knight's posture, his movements, how he holds the sword just before striking. You copy everything, hoping imitation will one day become instinct. You bleed now. You limp now. You learn now. Then, one morning, without fanfare, they call to you. You're going to ride with your knight now. Not as an observer, but as his second now. You don't sleep at all the night before now. You don't need to. When you mount your horse, you are ready now. Not perfect, not intrepid, but ready enough. Your story is still being written, but it is already engraved in the cold iron of swords, in the dust of roads, and in the calluses of your hands. You are no longer a child. You are not yet a man, but closer. You are a squire, becoming something more. You are 21 years old, or nearly so. Some squires are younger, others older. But age does not matter as much as the fact someone in authority has finally decided you are ready. Ready to kneel, swear, ready in theory to kill and die with a little more. Official ceremony. There is no sudden transformation now. You don't wake with a deeper voice or firmer jaw. You are still sore from yesterday's training, still have mud on your boots and a scar on your shoulder, just won't heal. But this is the moment when all your youth has come to your bruised body, battered pride, hands hardened by years of polishing, sharpening, loading, and serving. Everything has led here to the day of your appointment as knight. It begins with loneliness now. They give you a room, small and cold, in which to pray, reflect, and fast through the night. It has nothing glamorous about it, just stone walls, a candle, and a chapel blanket that somehow manages to be thin and rough at the same time. You kneel on the floor with aching bones and rumbling stomach, and try not to think about the heat of the kitchens or the aroma of roast pork coming from below. This vigil aims to purify the soul, prepare you to accept the sacred duties of a knight. You are expected to meditate on the responsibilities that await. Defend the weak, serve your Lord, defend the church now. In practice, you spend as much time wondering if anyone would notice if you took a sip of water or sat for 5 blessed minutes. You're not the only one who feels discomfort. Dozens of squires kept this vigil before you, some trembling with expectation, others feigning serenity. You wonder which group you're in. You try to remember all the prayers, creeds, and correct posture. You try not to think about the rumors of squires who vomit from nerves during the ceremony or faint in the night. It would be unfortunate, memorable, and unfortunate. At dawn, they escort you to the main hall. It has been transformed for the occasion. Banners are hanging there. The candles are flickering. Nobles, knights, and priests gather in ceremonial attire, whispering politely behind gloved hands. Silence falls as you enter. They announce your name aloud. You kneel down. Your lord, or the king, depending on your rank, approaches. He carries a sword, a symbol of service and power. It might not be his own sword. Some lords keep a ceremonial sword only for this purpose, polished to a mirror shine and never used in combat. You try not to look closely. You try not to tremble now. The sword strikes your shoulders, first on the left and then on the right. The appointment is made. In some traditions, you are also given a symbolic pat, a reminder of the physical and moral pain that you must now endure without complaint. It is less a blow than a firm pat, but the message is clear. The duty of a knight is not to console, but to sacrifice themselves. Then comes the oath itself. You speak solemnly, promising loyalty to your liege, to God, and to the ideals of chivalry. You promise to defend the weak, protect women, tell the truth, and fight with honor. You repeat the words with all the solemnity that you can. Although in silence, you wonder how many knights are still living according to them. Once the oath is completed, you rise, not as a child or servant, but as a knight. The change is subtle, internal, yet profound. The people who barely looked at you yesterday now nod solemnly. Your companions pat you on your shoulder. Your lord gives you a smile that, by noble standards, could well be an ovation. There may be a banquet afterwards, depending on the wealth of your lord or the court's mood. If so, you will sit a little higher at the table, drink from a finer cup, and receive congratulations from the nobles to whom you previously served wine. Some squires are forged on the battlefields, with an improvised ceremony in the middle of the butchery. Others receive all the pomp around them. In any case, the weight of the title rests on your shoulders, heavy as chainmail. Chivalry, after all, is not a destination, but a door itself. The world does not stop for you to enjoy your new status now. Your obligations expand immediately now. Now you're expected to lead men, not follow them, to make decisions, not simply obey, to ride in front, not in the rear. The same sword that knighted you is now yours, and no one will ever question your decisions again. If you have an heir, it will be public and it will cost you dearly. Now you have new responsibilities too. The word of a knight is binding. Your signature now has weight. Your absence in court is noticeable now. Your presence in church is taken for granted. If you drink too much or speak too freely, it affects not only you, but also your family, banner, and lord. A verbal slip can ruin alliances. A drunken brawl can undo months of diplomacy. In short, your margin for error is drastically reduced the moment you are touched on the shoulder with a sword. Your responsibilities extend beyond battle. If your lord grants you lands, you are expected to administer them with wisdom. That means collecting taxes, settling disputes between the peasants, maintaining the roads, and ensuring a good harvest. Knights are often imagined as solitary warriors, but they are really administrators, executors, and landowners. Your sword may stay in its sheath for months, but your seal is stamped on the wax almost daily. Now you have your own squire too. The irony is not lost on you. He is young, insecure, and eager to please. You teach him to polish your armor, to saddle your horse without bruising its humps, to serve wine without spilling it. At first you correct him gently, then more firmly. He reminds you of yourself. It is humiliating and somewhat funny to see how far you have come and how much you have left to go. There's also the matter of your coat of arms. If you don't have one already, now you must choose it. The colors, the symbols, the family motto, everything matters. They identify you in court and on the battlefield. They speak before you do. A rampant red lion on a golden field says something quite different from a black cross on a white band. Choose wisely, or pay a herald to assist you. Your new armor fits your build, assuming your lord is generous or your family still has money to spare. Full armor is costly, and each piece must be custom-made. Greaves for the legs, gauntlets for the hands, cuirass for the chest. You stand still while the blacksmiths measure and sound the pieces, leaving soot on your skin with their fingers. The weight feels impressive. Walking with it on is like learning to move again, but you feel safe inside it, as if the metal protects not only your body, but also your name. You take your first formal walk through town, not as a servant following a retinue, but at the head. The children run to the road's edge. The elders bow stiffly. A woman throws you a flower. You try not to seem too pleased. The peasants don't exactly cheer, but they stare at you. And in the medieval world, attention is a kind of applause. That night, in the solitude of your room, you slowly take off each piece of armor methodically. You place your sword carefully down. You look at your reflection in the polished plate and try to see what others saw today. A knight, a leader, a protector. You don't quite believe it yet, but you will soon. Not everything will change overnight. You continue training every day. You continue to get up early and pray still. You still limp after a long journey, and you still bleed when a sword grazes your elbow. But now your name is spoken with more weight. You are consulted, not given orders. The younger squires look at you with something like fear or respect, possibly both. The war will return again. You know it. And when it arrives, you will be expected to take your place in the vanguard. Being behind a wall of shields is over. Waiting for orders is over. You will lead the charge, raise your voice above the roar, and be first across the field. If fortune smiles on you, you will return with honor. If not, your shield will be taken home without you. This is the price of the title. This is the burden of the oath. But even so, you are proud, not of your status, but of your survival. You have endured the long years, the cold vigils, the humiliation, the training, the fear, and now you wear the title like a second skin. You are a knight, and your true service has only just begun. You don't become a knight and feel powerful right away. You become a knight, and then they hand you 60 pounds of steel and tell you to get on horse. The first real lesson of knighthood is not how to fight, but how to walk, breathe, and not fall down with the armor on. At first, it is a chainmail, one of interlocking rings that is placed on the shoulders like an iron tunic. It is not as heavy as it seems, but it sticks to you, drags your limbs, and traps every drop of sweat that your body produces underneath. You are a padded gambeson of linen filled with wool or rags, which smells awful after a single skirmish and worse after a week. But it prevents the mesh from rubbing against the skin like a cheese grater. As war evolves, so does your equipment. Plate armor begins to replace mesh. At first, just a breastplate and greaves. Then pauldrons for the shoulders, pods for the forearms, sabatons to cover the feet, joints, riveted segments. Each edition is designed to protect without tightening, although they almost always achieve both. In the end, you are wrapped in metal from the crown of your head to your feet, and it is less like wearing clothes and more like being wrapped in a walking bell. The helmet is the worst. It muffles the ear, reduces vision, and fogs up with breath. In battle, it protects the skull. Outside of it, its main function is to cause a throbbing headache. Some helmets have visors that can be raised, which helps you breathe and spit, although it also makes the face an easier target. Armors have advantages and disadvantages. Surprisingly, mobility is not impossible. You can run, crouch, ride a horse, and even roll if you're well trained. But everything requires effort. You're not agile. You are deliberate and quickly learn to conserve movements like a man counting his last coins. After all, if your opponent is not wearing anything heavier than boiled leather, he will be jumping while you look like a mobile sculpture of St. George. Then there is the maintenance. Each piece must be cleaned, oiled, and inspected. A single rusty rivet can jam a joint. A dented chest plate can bend with a second blow. Your squire becomes a blacksmith's apprentice overnight, scrubbing and hammering late into the night. If he forgets a strap or doesn't fasten your cuisses well, you notice it immediately and painfully. And let's not forget the weapons. Your sword is your constant companion, but not the only one. It is not the thin fencing sword of modern imagination, but a broad, heavy blade intended to cut, not to fence. Its edge remains sharp, but not as fine as a razor, to better withstand impacts. You carry it at your side, but only draw it when necessary. The sword is both a symbol and a tool, and in your hand, it becomes an extension of your will. Then there is the spear. A knight without a lance is like a fish without gills. Useless in open battle. The lance is not delicate. It is a sharp stick about 3 meters long, intended to be placed under the arm and pushed like a battering ram against anyone unlucky enough to be on the other side of the field. On horseback, it turns your momentum into lethal force. But it is also difficult to handle, easy to miss, and once broken, only serves to fuel the fire. The mace is a brutal companion. Short, thick, and blunt, without delicacy or elegance. Just a piece of iron on a stick designed to sink helms and break ribs. Useful when the armor of your enemy laughs at swords. When subtlety fails, the mace makes things clear with savage clarity. Axes are similar, less common among knights, more typical of mercenaries or northerners. But in hand-to-hand combat, an axe can hook a shield, split a helm, or drag a man off his horse. It is not considered chivalrous, but, to be fair, neither is war. Shields have both offensive and defensive functions. One is carried, usually in the shape of a kite or heater, hanging on the back or tied to the forearm. Carrying your coat of arms. A brilliant touch of symbolism in the middle of the mud and smoke. You learn to hit with it, to deflect, to absorb force. A good shield can save your life. A bad one can become the lid of your coffin. Siege weapons are something else entirely. Catapults, trebuchets, and battering rams handled by engineers and low-ranking soldiers. You watch them more than you handle them, unless you are very unlucky, but you learn to fear them. No armor can save you from a rock. When the battle arrives, your equipment is both savior and prison. In the charge, you ride with your lance high, your shield raised, and your visor down. Your world becomes a tunnel of noise and confusion. The impact is sudden and absolute. You hit or are hit. You fall or you don't. And if you fall, it depends on someone else. Perhaps your squire, who must drag you away before the stampede begins. After the charge, if you are still standing, the skirmish arrives. Sword in hand, you face a man. It is not elegant. It is a chaos of grunts, blood, and steel. You hit, block, pray. You don't look for heroism, but for joints. The armpits, behind the knees, the slits in the visor, the weak points. All knights have them, and if you don't find theirs, they will find yours. Then, assuming you survive, you learn the lesser-known role of a repair knight. You take off your armor piece by piece. Each dent and scratch tells its own little story. If a rivet breaks or a strap breaks, it is noted, recorded, and repaired. Your sword is cleaned, inspected, and re-oiled. All dull weapons must be sharpened. You don't sleep until your equipment is ready again, because next time it could cost you your life. You begin to appreciate the subtle differences between good and bad steel. You learn the names of the blacksmiths, the balance of a sword, the weight of a shield, the line where the helmet rests on the forehead. Everything becomes natural. You become picky with details that seemed trivial before. The type of leather in your gauntlets, the weight of a new axe, how the visor closes. Some knights personalize their gear with ornaments, engraved pommels, crests on the cuirasses, gold inlays. You could do the same if vanity and money allow it. But beneath the ornaments hides the same brutal reality. Armor is not a disguise. It is a chest to avoid death. Of course, there are disadvantages. Armor is expensive. Your share of war booty or tournaments often vanishes in repairs and replacements. And then there is the heat. Summer in full armor is like walking inside a forge. Especially under the midday sun. You sweat buckets, faint if you are not careful, and attract flies with the elegance of a walking roast. Despite everything, you trust your equipment like a second skin. You have tested it under the fire of arrows. You have felt the impact of a mace blow resonating in your ribs, and you have known that the armor fulfilled its function. It protects, yes, but also transforms. You walk more upright in it. People step aside when they see you coming. Children point at you. Commoners bow, and yet you know it. Steel does not make you invincible. It only postpones the inevitable. You can fight well, prepare thoroughly, wear the best armor forged in Christendom, and still fall before a sharp spear or arrow. The tools of a knight are tools of time, not certainty. When you take off your gear at night, you do it slowly, with reverence. Each strap you unbuckle, each piece you lift makes you feel smaller, lighter, more vulnerable. Underneath everything, you are just meat bruised, stiff, and sore. And it is in those moments of stillness with the sword on your lap and the armor cooling on the stand when you truly understand what it means to be a knight. You are not made of steel. You just wear it well. And so, each day begins with the same ritual. Lift, tie, just check. Your squire tightens the buckles and hands you the gauntlets, his gaze attentive to any wear or weakness. You nod in silence and re-enter the shell of your profession. Because no matter how tired you are or how many scars mark your ribs, you are still needed, still obliged to go out on horseback, too. Raise your shield to stand between danger and those who cannot. This is the life you have built plate by plate, sword by sword. This is the weight you have chosen to carry, and you carry it well. They told you there was a code, a noble and brilliant creed to live by. They called it chivalry. The word alone shone with promises like armor polished in morning light. It was meant to define what it meant to be a knight. Courage, courtesy, honor, protection of the weak, reverence for the church, a high ideal written in elegant letters, and praised by pulpits and poets. And then you rode into your first battle, saw a man in all his heraldic splendor trample a retreating soldier, and realized the code was more suggestion. Chivalry, in theory, is a code of conduct, a moral compass for those who carry swords, rooted in Christian values and feudal loyalty. It began as a way to temper violence with virtue. The church, always concerned about the havoc caused by idolatrous knights, strove to transform you from mercenary to sacred defender. You should not simply fight, but fight correctly in practice. However, chivalry is like a tapestry, grandiose from afar, but frayed up close. The official principles vary according to the chronicler or clergyman you ask, but some themes remain constant. Protecting the innocent, defending the church, loyally serving your Lord, showing mercy to enemies who surrender, being honest, avoiding unjust wars, and honoring women, especially those of noble birth. An excellent, even admirable list, but also inconvenient. Because in the middle of battle, no one stops to recite their virtues. You hit and survive. Orders are followed, even if they involve setting a village on fire suspected of disloyalty. Prisoners are taken, yes, but above all because they are worth a ransom. Mercy has market value. As for honesty, it is encouraged. Unless deception better serves your lord, a knight can be honorable in the abstract, but becomes remarkably flexible when lands or inheritances are at stake. Many lies have been wrapped in noble language and pronounced on horseback with great conviction. Protecting the weak sounds very nice in songs, but on the battlefield the weak are often collateral damage. If your lord orders you to crush a peasant revolt, you ride. If a convoy of commoners stands between you and the enemy's grain supply, You don't go around it, you go through it. The poor admire the knights from afar, because they rarely fare better when they pass by. Then there is the subject of women. The songs speak of courtly love, of gallant men consumed in poetic torment for unattainable noble ladies. In reality, your relationship with women is defined more by property rights than by poetry. Marriage is political. Romance, when it exists, is fleeting, and the protection you offer depends largely on social class. A noble woman can be venerated. A laundress, not so much. That is not to say that all knights are dishonorable. Many strive to live according to the code. They pray. They pay tithe. They avoid unnecessary cruelty. But the world in which you live rarely rewards moderation. A knight who hesitates to strike may not live to show mercy. A man who tells the truth, too, frankly, may find himself without lands or a head. Interestingly, tournaments are where chivalry shines most. In these theatrical shows, the rules are rigid and the honor is real. The opponent is greeted. Moderation is shown. One loses with elegance. It's theater, yes, but it's theater in which the actors believe in the script. And, for a moment, the code becomes reality, even if briefly. There are manuals and written guides that detail the conduct to follow each night in Florida. One might advise not to hit an opponent who has lost his helmet. Another might say that if a lady drops her glove, you should pick it up without stepping on it or looking at her ankles too long. The church writes its own rules, more focused on piety. Attend Mass, confess sins, avoid gluttony, and above all, never forget who granted you the right to kill. These manuals are read aloud in courts and training rooms. Some squires memorize them. Others nod politely and return to sword exercises. In reality, the code is interpreted differently in each house. Some lords emphasize loyalty. Others demand ferocity. A few take chivalry so seriously that they repudiate their children for showing cowardice. Others sacrifice boys who have not seen battle simply for a convenient marriage alliance. What you learn in time is that chivalry is not a sword to wield. It is a mirror. Some polish it daily. Others break it for convenience. You try to follow the spirit, if not the letter. You aid your squire when nobody sees you. Even if your companions make fun of you, forgive an enemy who has surrendered. You return on horseback to a burning village to escort a lame peasant woman because her son clings to your leg and says, "Please." These moments stay with you longer than most victories. They cost little. They feel like something old, something sacred. And nevertheless, no bard will sing of them. You discover that chivalry is not about great gestures. It is about small decisions made when nobody watches. It is about being decent in a profession of destruction. It is about knowing you are a weapon and choosing sometimes not to attack. Even so, the tension never disappears. One day you kneel before a bishop, and the next you torture a barn, to cradle a wounded companion and trample a fleeing soldier who gets in your way, to write your name under an oath of honor and moderation and sign orders condemning hungry men to death. You begin to understand that the code of chivalry is less a shield than a compass. It does not prevent you from getting lost. It only offers something to hold on to when fog envelopes all. Some days that is enough. In the quiet hours, you reflect on the contradictions. The songs you memorize speak of knights who killed beasts and rescued virgins. Your life, meanwhile, consists of tax disputes, bloody marches, and sore knees. They promised you glory. They gave you logistics. And, nevertheless, you do not resent it. Not entirely, because sometimes the code helps you remember who you were to be before the world took you over. You know knights who abuse the code, using it as a weapon. They quote the scriptures while looting. They preach honor and practice terror. You learn to recognize them by their polished crests and empty eyes. And you learn to step aside, or when the opportunity presents, to get in their way. You are not perfect. You have broken the code. You have hit men who had surrendered. You have taken spoils that were not yours. You kept silent when you should have spoken. But you remember the faces of those who tried. The knight who defended a door so a people could flee. The one who refused to burn a monastery, even under threat of exile. The one who died kneeling, not as surrender, but in prayer. And so, in your own way, you keep trying. You carry the code not in the scriptures, but in your habits. You pick it up like your sword each morning, knowing it may slip from your hand at nightfall. But you look for it anyway, because without it you are nothing more than a murderer. And with it, maybe, just maybe you're something more. This is chivalry, not what the minstrels sing, nor what the priests preach, but what you try to practice in a world that gives you every reason not to. And so you ride, still faithful to your oath. You defend your lord, fight his enemies, bury his dead. But you also feed your squire when the pantry's empty. You speak kindly to the old woman of town who remembers you as a child. You return a fallen glove, even if no one sees. You are a knight and remember the code, not because it makes you stronger, but because it reminds you what strength is for. One day, in many years, a child will ask you what it means to be knightly. You will not recite scriptures nor point out shields. You will hand him your sword and tell him to hold it firm. And then you will ask if he can carry it without ever letting it fall on a wrong soul. You will tell him that is a good starting point, because in the end, chivalry has nothing to do with purity. It is about persistence, about falling and rising again, and about choosing, even in silence, not to become what you swore to fight. And with each choice, you unsheath your sword a bit more. You have trained for years. You have carried swords before wielding one. You have seen men die before they allowed you to charge, and you have polished your own armor so many times that you can still smell the vinegar and oil in your dreams. But none of that truly prepares you for this. The moment the trumpet sounds, your horse moves under you, and the ground in front of you fills with bodies and banners of your enemy. The battlefield is not a stage. It is not an arena of honor, nor a strategic chessboard. It is something throbbing and whining, mud, blood, and metal wrapped in chaos. You can recite the names of ancient heroes, codes of chivalry, rules of combat whispered by bishops in candlelit chapels. Out here, none of that matters. The march to war begins well before combat. You ride for days, even weeks, in rain, sleepless, and in sun. The air worsens as the army grows. Body heat, manure, and rotten rations mix into something so disgusting it churns even the most resistant stomach. You get blisters on your feet. Tempers fray. Your companions go from camaraderie to murmurs and then silence. Men begin to smell like their horses. You too. Life in camp is short and miserable. The tents flutter in wind like wet flags. The bonfires give off more smoke than heat. You eat what is left: salted meat, hard bread, dried peas. Sometimes you are lucky. Most of the time, no. Drinking water is scarce. And when there is, you worry about what may float in it. The armor is cold in morning and burning at noon. You sleep with boots on and sword within reach. And then, one morning, you crest a ridge and see them. An army deployed along the field, with banners waving and knights gleaming in the rising sun. The moment has arrived. Your commander gives orders, which are shouted and passed along. Everyone nods. Few actually hear them. You get a knot in stomach. You check your horse's girth. You pray, or pretend to. You wonder how many will die before sun sets. Then it begins. The charge is not elegant. It is like thunder. The hooves tear up ground. The spears are lowered, and each heartbeat counts to impact. You aim with your weapon and hope that the man in front of you is a little slower, a little more scared. The shock is chilling. You may hit him. You may fail. You may be hit. You may fall. And if you fall, pray you can get up before the next wave tramples you. The noise is relentless. Screams, howls, clash of steel, neighs of horses, men begging. There is no rhythm, only violence. You fight in flashes. A sword swings near your head. You duck. A man pounces. Your sword blocks without thinking. An axe hits your shield. You feel impact in your teeth. You don't think in terms of heroism. You think in terms of centimeters. Each step forward could be last. Every moment you stand is a miracle. And all the time the mud sticks to your boots, the blood slips through your hands, and the air tastes of iron and ash. There are no clean victories. Even if you survive, you've probably killed someone face to face. You have looked him in the eyes. You have seen his fear. You have felt his last breath on your face. No one teaches you to live with that. Sometimes you lose your balance. A blow knocks you down. Your visor comes loose, and suddenly, the world is a whirlwind of helmets, swords. You thrash, crawl, struggle to rise. If your armor gets stuck in mud, you're like an upside-down turtle. If your squire finds you in time, he may get you out. If not, well, there are worse ways than being forgotten. You see others in distance. Knights knocked off horses, impaled peasants, banners falling. You recognize faces, friends, companions. They disappear in an instant, replaced by another swinging sword. There's no time to mourn, just time to breathe and hit again. Sometimes, the skirmish becomes confusion. The orders lose meaning. The rows dissolve. You find yourself next to men you don't recognize. Enemies are confused with allies and vice versa. In those moments, the battlefield reveals its true form. It is not a clash of nations or ideologies, but a storm for survival. If you survive, it does not end with trumpets, but with exhaustion. Your arms hurt. Your ears are ringing. If your horse is still alive, it is foaming at the mouth and trembling. You stagger towards camp, take off your armor with trembling hands, and look at your bloodied gloves. You hope it is not your blood. You're not sure. Later, you walk across the field. The ravens are already gathering. The men groan as they lie, too injured to move. You try to help, but there are too many. To some you leave water. To others a whispered prayer. To some you give death because it is more merciful. Your boots are soaked in blood. You stop noticing the smell. The scavengers are already working, stripping the dead of rings, wallets, boots, sometimes even their teeth. It is dishonorable, yes, but also practical. War is expensive, and a fallen knight's sword can pay for someone's grain during the winter. You look away. You do not stop them. You find your companions, those who survived, and sit with them by a dying bonfire, all in silence. Some clean wounds, others just stare. No one boasts. No one drinks. You all know it is not the time. Those who laugh after battle often cry when they get a fever. There is no celebration. There is only counting. How many have been lost? How many banners have been captured? How many horses must be replaced? How many squires have not returned? In the following weeks, history is cleaned up. The minstrels compose ballads about noble charges and glorious resistance. The Lord gives a speech. The priests declare a just victory. Upon your return, you are paraded through the streets. They throw flowers at you. The children cheer you. You wave, smile, nod, but remember the smell of the battlefield, the look of the man you ran through with your sword, the screams of your friend as he bled out next to a broken shield. You do not forget that this is a brutal battlefield. It is not the battlefield of legends, with gleaming armor and valuable jewels, but the real one, muddy, terrifying, noisy, and confusing. A place where honor is a luxury, mercy is scarce, and survival is a skill. You are no longer simply a knight. You are a soldier, a veteran. And even if you keep riding, polishing your armor, training your squire, a part of you will always be there in that nameless field under the gray sky, with sword stained with blood and breath fogging your visor. That part of you never fully abandons you. You try not talking about it. What really happened here? When new squires ask, you give lessons on form, posture, strategy. You don't describe sounds. You don't mention trembling hands. Not because you are ashamed, but because words cannot make sense of it, and because a part of you fears they still want it. But you prepare them anyway. You train them to keep their shield up, even when tired. To watch their steps, to check the straps of their greaves twice, not once. These small details can save lives. You know it. You have seen the price paid when they're forgotten. Over time, your own scars will fade, at least on the surface, but underneath they remain, not as wounds, but memories. You remember the weight of the fallen knight you dragged from a ditch. You remember the silence before the charge. You remember how the field was afterward, still shattered, bad, and you keep riding because someone must, because the war never ends. It only sleeps between each battle. You no longer seek any glory. You seek clarity. You seek survival. And you do everything possible to make sure that the men who are by your side return home. This is what fighting means. Not for banners or for poems, but for the man to your left and the one to your right. For the squire who still believes songs. for the prayer you whisper even when you don't believe. You have been molded by steel, but the battlefield forged you. This is the brutal battlefield, and you survived. And by surviving, you have learned the price of every inch of land, which is not measured in steps, but in lives. You survive your first battle, then another. And although the war never ends, it does calm. The armies dissolve, the swords are sheathed, and the flags are lowered. It is not a fight or a massacre, although it may resemble one, but a staged battle with heraldry, pomp, and profit. Where war is chaos, a tournament choreography. Where battle creates legends, the tournament creates celebrities. Everything begins with invitation. If your name has weight or your lord's coins are enough, you're summoned to a battlefield near a bustling city where flags fly as high as registration fees. You arrive with your squire in tow, your armor polished to almost dazzle, and your horse combed and adorned like a bride's hair. The ground is prepared in advance. Wooden stands are erected on grass. Merchants set up stalls where they sell meat pies and tokens. The minstrels rehearse songs they hope to sell before the just begin. Children run between tents, shouting the names of favorite knights. Yours may be among them if your last performance was bloody enough. But make no mistake, this isn't a peaceful pastime. A tournament is as dangerous as any battlefield, only better lit and more politely advertised. There are two main events, the melee and joust. The melee is a great simulated battle. Dozens of knights on foot or horseback launch themselves at each other in an open field. It is said to imitate real combat, though it rarely obeys real combat's rules. The goal is to disarm, dismount, or strike your opponents until they surrender, preferably alive. Not out of pity, but because corpses do not pay ransoms. You enter the field with your equipment, the shield bearing your coat of arms, your heart pounding behind the armor. The horns sound. The crowd roars. You lower your visor and launch into the charge. The fight feels very real. The swords are blunt, yes, but they're not harmless. Bones break easily. Teeth are lost. Pride is always at stake. You hit, and you get hit. You fall, then you get up. Somewhere in the stands, they shout your name, either as a sign of triumph or concern, sometimes both. The skirmish ends when only a few are left standing, or when the judges deem it too undignified. You leave the field limping, euphoric, exhausted, or sometimes unconscious. If you do it right, your reputation grows. If you do it wrong, you pretend you don't care while discreetly checking to see whether you have bruises. Then comes the joust, the jewel of the tournament. One knight, one lance, one pass. The barrier separates you from your opponent as you both advance at full speed on horseback, trying to break your lance on the other's shield, helmet, or chest. Points get awarded. Helmets are dented. From time to time, ribs break. More than one knight has died under the crowd's applause. It's quite a spectacle. There is so much ceremony that it rivals a wedding. Your name is announced. The trumpet sounds. A lady ties a ribbon to your lance. You bow to the stands, greet your opponent, and take your place at the end of the jousting track. Then the flag falls, and all that pomp disappears under the roar of hooves, and your world is reduced to the tip of your lance and the target in front. When you hit cleanly, the crash of impact resonates like thunder. Splinters explode. The crowd cheers you. If you're knocked down, you fall hard against the ground and remain there long enough to remember that mud has no chivalry. Victory brings money. And more importantly, the lords watch from the stands, looking for talent, potential, or a famous spouse. If you impress the right person, your luck could change overnight. If you make a name, you may be invited to bigger circuits, to tournaments in Paris, London, or Rome, or at least that's what the stories say. But not all justs are equal. Some are friendly, based on honor, and carefully judged. Others are bloodier and more corrupt. There are rumors of knights bribing marshals, sabotaging armor, or exchanging lances for blunted tips. And every tournament has a share of grudges, rekindled feuds, and insults answered with steel. Then there are the injuries, dislocated shoulders, shattered wrists, concussions. You quickly learn not to remove your helmet until you are sure your ears still work. Not even spectators are always safe. A splintered lance once flew toward the stands, taking out a merchant's eye. He still comes to see the tournament every year from the other side. Outside the arena, the tournament is a fair. The merchants sell everything from relics to roasted chestnuts. The scribes sell poems composed on the spot. The apprentices make jewels with sticks in the mud while imitating your name. At night, the bonfires crackle, beer flows freely, and minstrels sing songs that exaggerate every blow struck and favor obtained. If you have earned a few bruises, at least you can earn a few verses. The nobles organize banquets. You attend clean and dressed in a doublet that fits like a punishment. You bow. You drink. You endure the conversation. A lady might ask about your technique, though her interest is less to do with lances and more with inheritance or scandal, or both. Tournaments are also a place for politics. Alliances are forged, rivalries ignited, and lords make discreet deals behind their glasses. A victory on the field can lead to a contract, vassalage, or sudden engagement. A defeat, however, can be remembered long after your ribs have healed. Despite all its splendor, tournaments are expensive. The registration fees, the repair of the armor, the care of the horses, the tents, and the bribes. Everything adds up. A poorly managed campaign can leave you poorer than when you arrived. Some knights ask for loans. Others sell their lands. A few resort to less recommendable methods. Gambling, extortion, even rigging matches. Even so, you return. You always return because there is an emotion, a pulse that nothing else matches. Because the crowd remembers your name. Because a good victory in a tournament can do what 5 years of border patrol cannot. It elevates you. It makes you known. It makes you visible. And in a world where power resides in perception, visibility is everything. You enter on horseback, you fight, you bleed, you bow. And when you win, smile with broken lips. Because for a fleeting instant, you are not just a servant sheathed in steel. You are the protagonist. You are not at war, but in combat. This is the tournament circuit, and you are still standing. At week's end, your body is a record of bruises, scratches, and indignities. Your squire works late into the night restoring your equipment. You spend the night drinking watered wine, pretending that your shoulder does not hurt with every breath. A black eye makes you interesting company during dinner. The limp gives you character. You don't talk about fear, of the heartbeat just before the lance falls, of the instant in which you wonder if the next blow will be clean or definitive. You swallow it. You hide it under layers of steel and arrogance. Every night is like this. Fear is commonplace. Admitting it, no. If the tournament has gone well for you, you leave with coins, a new favor tied to your saddle, and invitations for the next event. If not, you leave empty-handed and full of regrets, already calculating how many tournaments it will take to rebuild what you spent chasing glory. The way back is quieter, less triumphant. A few companions go with you. One coughs up blood. Another cradles a bandaged hand that perhaps will never wield a spear again. The squires chat, still delighted by the spectacle. They still do not understand the price of applause. And so, bruised but intact, you return to your estate or to your garrison, where your true obligations await. But for a week, you are more than just a soldier. You are a spectacle. You are a legend. You will do it again. Because, although war can forge your reputation, tournaments let you write it in letters of gold. And sometimes that is enough. Because in the eyes of the crowd, you are not only a knight. You are a name, a banner, a force in motion. And for a brief and brilliant moment, everyone has seen you shine. The trumpets fade out. The tournaments end. The battlefield is silent. And you do not return to rest, but for something more complex. Responsibility, because you're not only a knight, but also a vassal of a lord, landowner, and guarantor of law. And whether your thief is large or small, he demands as much from you as any joust or skirmish. Your estate, as it is a mosaic of thatched roofs, grazing fields, and stubborn people. It was often granted to you as a reward for your services, and with it came a series of obligations, not to the land, but to those who work it. They do not know you as a warrior, rider, or spear bearer. They know you as the man who demands grain in October, sends constables to resolve disputes, and sometimes rides through town on horseback just to remind everyone who owns what. Your mornings do not begin with fencing, but with accounting books. Your butler recites figures, bushels harvested, taxes collected, outstanding debts. You nod as if you understand, although half the time that's not true. There's always some deficit. A pig disappeared, a harvest was lost, someone died with outstanding debts. The solution always involves more paperwork and fewer pigs. Then come the applicants. The peasants line up in your hall to express their grievances. He stole my goose. His cow trampled my barley. His son hit mine with a stick. You sit under a banner with your shield, listening with the weariness of a man who has faced arrows and would prefer them to this. Justice must be quick, or at least noisy. You nod. You impose a fine. You send your men to inspect the fences. The villagers leave, mostly satisfied. That's what you hope. Disputes between peasants are one thing. Disputes between your men-at-arms are worse. When two armed vassals argue over borders or livestock, swords clash. You must intervene, not as a fellow knight, but as their lord, firm, impartial, a man with authority. It is delicate to project force without inflaming tempers. In general, you understand it. You also collect taxes, grain, wool, coins, or goods in kind. They are counted, stored, then sent to your feudal lord. You keep a portion to pay your men and maintain your home. Another part vanishes into the scribe's hands, never to reappear. You suspect that a part feeds the bishop's cellar or finances your lord's latest fondness for embroidery. But to question the chain of the feudal economy is like questioning gravity. You nod, sign, and send the ox cart to its destination. Next come the inspections. You own fields and ride slowly between rows of barley and flax. You speak with the bailiff, the supervisor appointed by the town, who informs you of the labor shortage and brewing discontent. You pretend not to hear the murmurs that come from the hedges about rents, taxes, and your new foundation, which has probably cost more than a plow. You smile, nod, and keep riding. Respect is maintained less by affection than distance. Your hall must be stocked and guarded, your garrison trained, your walls in good condition, and your butler must remember that the grain cellar smells bad again. You supervise the blacksmith, cooper, and baker. You approve repairs to the millstone, organize firewood for the winter, and, once a month, offer a banquet to local tenants to maintain the illusion that everyone is happy and loyalty is mutual. You arbitrate marriages, approve apprenticeship contracts, and, on occasion, impose punishments. Thieves can lose fingers. Poachers can pay with coins or days of labor. There are gallows, but you rarely use them. They're more useful as symbols than tools. Even so, when necessary, you remind people what happens when the law is ignored. The church is ever present. A priest serves your estate, and you contribute to his chapel's upkeep, so your name does not appear in a sermon. You attend Mass, confess sins that you vaguely regret, and make donations that conveniently coincide with your latest misdeed. After all, piety is easier with coins than conduct. Even your home needs management. Your servants alternate between loyalty, incompetence, and mild insubordination. The cook is furious about the flour's quality. The stable boy swears the hay shipment is late again. One of your maids is scandalously friendly with a visiting knight, and you must pretend not to notice unless it causes a scandal or, worse still, a rumor. Your squire always needs training. He forgets your saddle straps, leaves your sword unsheathed when it rains. Once he cleaned your boots with butter. You scolded him, trained him, threatened to send him to the monastery, and ended the day praising his effort with a gesture of approval. That's all the boy wants. Your wife, if you have one, takes care of her part of the estate, organizing the kitchens, directing the servants, and keeping accounts. She is as sharp as your sword and twice as terrifying when crossed. She reminds you when the rents have to be paid, when your cousin's widow expects a letter, and that the priest has caught you sleeping in Mass again. You learn to listen. You also learn never to suggest that she organize the next party without preparing for a 3-day discussion about the table linen. In times of famine, Your role becomes that of reluctant judge and beggar. You request help from your lord while rationing what little you have. You know that if the people go hungry, the manor weakens. A dead peasantry cannot cultivate the fields. So you offer just enough for them to keep working and enough so their envy does not turn into rebellion. In times of abundance, you are generous, but visibly so. You distribute bread at the chapel door. You toss coins during the holidays. It is not charity. It is theater. It maintains order. The peasants call you my lord, but you are not very sure if it is out of respect, resentment, or resignation. Probably for all three. They bow deeply, but you see flashes of judgment in their eyes. You pass them, heavy in your saddle, with the armor shining. You are their protector. You are their taxes. You are their judge, and, sometimes, their executioner. From time to time, you receive visiting knights or minor nobles. These visits are equal parts hospitality and hostage negotiation. You must appear rich, but not wasteful, powerful, but not threatening. A wrong word about the king's taxes could brand you disloyal. A poorly cooked pigeon could insult your guest cousin, who happens to be an earl. You walk the tightrope of courtesy, pomp, and performance. But not everything is caution and government. There are also moments of tranquility. You ride alone at dawn through soaked fields, nodding to the shepherds who have been on their feet for more hours than you. In winter, you sit by the fire and listen to your butler murmur the accounts while the flames crackle behind him. You share a drink with your sergeant-at-arms. You are both old enough to admit that your back hurts more than before. You are the lord of your manor, but also their captive. You cannot leave for long. Bandits could attack. The grain could rot. Your cousin could try to claim something. Even a trip to the court feels like abandoning a child to fend for himself. And when you return, there is always something broken. A door, a contract, a fence, a nose. Even so, there is pride in it. Not in power, but in structure. You keep this place standing. You feed 100 mouths. You resolve disputes before they turn into feuds. You remember names. You attend baptisms, funerals, and harvest dances. You kneel next to the dying and sign contract for the newlyweds. You are interwoven in the rhythm of the earth, in its heartbeat. This is the other life of a knight. It is not glory nor blood, but government. And although it will never be sung by minstrels or carved in stone, you know the truth. A knight's sword defends his name, but his heritage keeps him alive. Because in the end, when the sword is sheathed and the war drums fall silent, it is not your victories that remain. It is your land, your people, and the fragile peace that you keep together, decision by decision. When the halls fall silent, the cornices close, and your sword returns to its shelf, you have something less commented on and little romantic left, your private life. You might think that after the tournaments, the campaigns, and the affairs of the estate, every night you would fall surrendered into a dreamless sleep. But you would be wrong. Rest is elusive. Comfort is intermittent. The truth is, sleep is a luxury in a nocturnal world, and often you must negotiate it. Your bed is not the paradise of later centuries. It is a wooden frame filled with straw or wool, covered with linen sheets that smell faintly of dust and fatigue. Perhaps you share it with your spouse, or you are alone, or sometimes with your armor extended to your side to dry, making a soft ticking as heat leaves the metal. You don't sleep all night. That's not how things work. You sleep in shifts, interrupted by prayers, patrols, and old wounds that hurt more as the fire dies down. Some nights, they summon you to resolve a dispute in the barracks. Other times you simply stay awake, reliving a joust gone wrong, or wondering if the butler lied again about the barn. But not everything is pessimism. There is also laughter and warmth that does not come from a fire. Your hall is more than a court. It is your haven, your theater, your hall. The minstrels sing by the fire. A bard may pass by and recite tales of distant wars or princes in love. You already know how they end, but you enjoy them anyway. Familiarity is comfort. Games are played. Dice, chis, bagamon. Sometimes you cheat when no one is watching, or you lose resoundingly and blame the firelight, the drink, or a suspicious angle of the table. Your companions complain, laugh, and serve more wine. The banquets, when they arrive, are noisy, not grandiose like a royal banquet, but full of noise and roast meat, beer spilled on the floor, and laughter that echoes in the beams. You sit at the high table, but not far from the hall. You drink with your men, toast your squire, toss some bone to the dogs under the bench. A juggler or jester may perform. His jokes are thinly veiled insults about the local clergy or visiting nobles. You laugh louder than necessary, if only to show the guest that yes, you know how to take a joke. It is a fragile peace that is maintained thanks to the roast pork and hard bread. Sometimes, the evenings are quieter. A servant plays the lute. Your wife embroiders, humming a hymn that she barely remembers. You fall asleep in the chair by the fire, and only wake when the logs collapse in a shower of sparks. For a moment, everything is still. Your family goes to bed early. The servants get up before dawn, so they disappear quickly. Your squire stays, waiting for praise or advice, or simply because he doesn't want to return to the straw mat next to the armory. You dismiss him kindly. He has earned his rest, even if you have not. You may wander around the manor at night, old customs from years of campaigning, checking locks, spying among the shadows, listening for any noise. You don't expect to find anything, but sometimes you just need to move, feel the ground under your boots, and remind yourself that you are still here, that the fire still burns, and that the walls are still yours. When the storms arrive, sleeping becomes nearly impossible. The wind howls through the closed windows. The beams creak. You remember nights in the countryside, when the only refuge was a cape and a horse's back. You remind yourself that this is better now. You almost believe it. Private life also means private thoughts, and these are harder to handle than the fields or the squires. You wonder if the land is truly yours, or if you only keep it until a richer man wants it. You think about the faces of the men you killed. You remember some, but not others. You think about your father and whether he felt the same conflict between duty and doubt. On the best nights, you write or try to. You scribble letters on parchment, noting expenses or drafting formal, rigid notes for other landowners. From time to time, you try writing poetry. It is terrible, but your butler pretends it is not, and your wife hides the worst before guests find it. When the guests arrive, your private life disappears. Everything becomes an act. The hall is cleaned. The good wine is brought out. You laugh twice at the same joke and endure stories about hawks that flew higher and horses that ran faster than those in your stable. You nod. You flatter. You endure. But when they leave, when the doors close and the boots stop echoing, you allow yourself the rarest luxury of all, silence. You sit by the fire with the cup cooling in your hand and let silence linger. There are no battles to plan, nor taxes to collect, only the sound of firewood crackling and your own breathing in darkness. Your body is a map of scars. You know which shoulder creaks with cold, which ribs hurt when it rains, a broken finger from a tournament in Kent, a scar on your thigh from a skirmish near the border. These pains are familiar. You greet them like old companions. You have learned not to complain. Everyone has pains. The squire asks you once if you ever sleep well. You smile. Sometimes you tell him yes when the fire goes out and the dogs don't snore. It's a lie, of course, but it's one of those lies that are told with affection. And then there are dreams, vivid, strange, persistent. Sometimes you return to battle, looking for a sword that is not there. Sometimes you walk through the halls of your childhood home, but the walls collapse and no one says your name. Once you dreamed that you were flying over fields, rivers, and the mansion itself. For once you woke smiling. Not all moments are great. Most are not. There is mud in the hallway, a loose board on the floor that catches your boot, an overturned bucket, a burnt loaf of bread, a cough in the night that makes you sit up and listen until it passes. These are the details of life. This is what fills your time between swords and steel. On feast days, the private mixes with the public sphere. There's a kind of dance. You watch more than you participate, but sometimes they drag you into a circle and you start clapping to the rhythm of a song older than the church itself. You take rigid steps, you laugh at your own movements, and your wife laughs even louder. The servants smile, even if only for a moment. You give gifts, bread, cheese, sometimes coins. The children chase each other across the patio while the old people sit in the sun, and pretend that their knees do not hurt. During an afternoon, no one is taxed, judged, or summoned. You observe, not as a lord, not even as a gentleman, but as a man. Only a silently grateful man. Your dog rests his head on your boot. You scratch him behind the ears and let your shoulders droop. You are tired, but not as battle tires you. This is a deeper pain, the one that comes from carrying not only weapons, but people, places, and purposes. And still you do it, because here there is rhythm, a strange, stubborn peace between duties. It is not comfort, nor tranquility, but something closer to meaning. This is the private life of a gentleman, and it is more difficult to master than war. Because, although the chronicles record your battles and banners, it is these quieter hours, the half-forgotten songs, the unfinished letters, the silence of a sleeping hall, that really tell the story of who you were. You get up at dawn, with aching joints, the cold penetrating more deeply than before. The butler greets you with a nod. The squire follows him, quieter than in recent years. At first you don't notice anything strange, until you go out and realize something changed. It is not the air or weather, but the rhythm of the world itself. Fewer helmets on the road, fewer hands raised in greeting. The banners are still there, but they hang lower than before. Your role, previously essential, now seems ceremonial. You keep riding a horse, keep wearing the armor, keep training the boys who ascend the ladder with fire in their eyes. But even they now look over their shoulder at you, towards the engineers who draw strange machines, or the captains who train rows of men with pikes and gunpowder. The future no longer rides a war horse. The first time you see a musket fired in anger, it seems a mistake. There is no nobility in it. There is no dance, no jewels, just a burst, a cloud of smoke, and a man fallen. You watch it from a hill, flanked by your men, and you say nothing. Later, you clean your sword anyway, out of habit, perhaps, or out of rebellion. The Lord, who used to summon you every time there was a skirmish on the border, now only sends messages in winter. Requests for grain counts, tax lists, reports on tenant movements. The battles are still taking place, but they're led by men with maps, not by men. Your presence is a formality. Your advice, a courteous tradition in the court. The great gentlemen meet less frequently. The old names, the ones you memorized when you were a squire, fade from conversation. Those who remain arrive slower, with their crests more faded. You greet each other with a gesture, without words. No one wants to say aloud what you all know. Your armor, which you use to polish carefully, accumulates dust between uses. The squire keeps greasing it more out of reverence than necessity. Now it weighs a lot, not only because of its weight, but because of the memories it holds. Each dent recalls a skirmish. Each rivet, a day of a life that now fades into myth. Sometimes you still put it on for ceremonies, for parades. Once, a child asked you if it was real. You no longer correct them when they call it old-fashioned. The pomp is still there, although it is beginning to crack. The holidays are quieter. Fewer nobles are attending. Fewer heralds proclaim names with the enthusiasm of yesteryear. The songs continue praising days and nights, but always in the past. You listen, nod, and raise your glass. You smile when they look at you during verses that start with "in the days of." In private, you walk the grounds of your estate and observe your tenants working. Now they plow with more modern tools. Some have coins bearing the king's effigy. Others carry paper, permits, receipts, and even letters. As literacy spreads, the blacksmith's son wants to be a scribe. The miller's daughter speaks about going to school. They are good things, you say to yourself, but they come with a whisper. You are no longer what children aspire to be. You keep training them, wielding the sword, but now it is harder. The cold stiffens your shoulders. It is hard to breathe when you climb the slopes. The sword seems heavier, although it is not. You grunt more when you stand up, and the squire, now grown, looks at you as you once looked at your teacher, half with respect, half with expectation. Even the battles that you summoned to feel different. You no longer ride in the vanguard. You are asked to observe and advise. Your role is that of wisdom, not action. And although you appreciate the respect, a part of you still longs to charge and feel the ground tremble under your mount. Now you understand it. Of course, the era of the knight is coming to an end, not with a roar, but with a series of rumbles. Gunpowder does not care about lineages. Formations do not care about honor. The night charge, once feared, is now a target for cannons and muskets. You have seen it. You have counted corpses. You try not to resent it. After all eras must end. The Romans believed their roads would last forever. The ancient emperors believed their names would survive stone. And now even stones are reused to build barns and chapels. Time reduces all legacies to something useful. Still, the pain remains. Silent, persistent. You feel it when your sword no longer awakens admiration, but curiosity. When your banner is not recognized for victories, but for how long it has waved. When your war horse dies, and the stable boy asks if you will replace it with a mule. It is more practical, he says. You tell yourself that you're lucky. You have lived. You have seen the best and worst of your order. You have earned your land, name, and seat at the high table. You have arrived home. Not everyone did. Sometimes you take the long road through the old battlefield. Now it is just farmland. Silent. There's a grove where archers stood before. A ridge where the cavalry met. You dismount and walk through it. Your boots sink into soft earth. There is a twisted, worn marker stone. Nobody remembers the names carved on it. You do. At night, dreams are more frequent. They are not always nightmares, though some are, but vivid flashes of moments you thought forgotten. A lance that breaks, a companion's laughter, the exact tone of the sky over a foreign field. You wake cold and wonder why the memories are sharper than your sword. Now you write more, not reports or orders, but reflections. You try to capture what it was like. The weight of armor before dawn, the tension before a joust, the smell of the field after rain. You want to record what being a knight felt like. Not in legend, but in reality. You don't quite know who you're doing it for. Perhaps for the child who will one day find it in a chest. Perhaps for no one. You still receive visits. They ask you questions. Was it glorious? Was it honorable? Sometimes on good days you answer carefully. But it was also cold, noisy, and lonely. You tell them that knighthood was service. Service to a lord, to a land, to an ideal. And sometimes when the wind blew right, it seemed like something bigger. Now you walk with a cane. The squire, now an adult, walks by your side and tries not to look worried. He calls you lord. Still, you allow it. It costs nothing. And it reminds you that, although the era is ending, you are still its echo. One night, you give him your sword. Not in ceremony, just in silence. He takes it with both hands, eyes wide open. He doesn't give thanks. He doesn't have to. And so it fades you, not in shame, but in rhythm. The corridors grow quieter. The bonfire goes out. Your duties diminish. The earth continues. People work. And in the stillness between seasons, you feel something like peace. Let bards sing of dragons and jewels. Let painters depict brilliant loads and spurs of gold. You remember the cold mornings, the twisted smiles, the broken ribs, and the bad jokes, the smell of wet horse, and the taste of cheap beer. That was the cavalry too, and that was enough. You do not know what the world will become, only that it shall. Castles will crumble away. Cannons will loudly roar. The old customs will be collected into new books, rules, uniforms. But perhaps, in some chapel or court, a tapestry will hang on, and a child will point to the figure in the corner, the one wearing battered chainmail, and ask, "Who is that?" And perhaps, just perhaps, someone will remember him. Not battles, nor banners, but the man. That will have to do.